Ethan Kane had always been quiet.
Even as a young man, he preferred observation to words, careful planning to impulsive action.
When the invitation from Zithra arrived, he felt a mixture of curiosity and caution. Humans were rare on the outer worlds, and invitations to alien courts were often more dangerous than prestigious. Zithra's royal empire was legendary across several star systems, opulent, complex, and unyielding. Few outsiders survived its scrutiny. He stepped onto the planet with careful steps, his boots crunching on the crystalline surface that shimmered beneath the alien sky. The air was breathable, but strange currents made his skin tingle with a subtle static energy. The royal palace floated above the ground on anti-gravity fields, a massive structure of iridescent metals and floating lights. Drones and AI attendants hovered around, scanning his every movement. Ethan's purpose was clear: assist the royal engineers in stabilizing the Empire's energy grid. Humans had never worked with this scale of energy manipulation before, but his scientific mind had been trained on anomalies and systems far beyond Zithra's immediate understanding. He was confident, but he knew he had to be careful. The royal court would judge him not only by his knowledge, but by his form, his presence, even his body's strength. The first encounter with the royal family was immediate and tense. The prince, a tall, lean alien with translucent skin that glowed faintly in dim light, regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. His eyes, bright and angular, seemed to measure every molecule of Ethan's being, as if calculating how useless or dangerous he might be. "You are human," the prince said, his voice cutting like ice. "Small, fragile, and yet you think you can assist us?" Ethan remained silent. He bowed slightly, not out of fear, but as a sign of respect. The prince laughed, a sound that echoed through the crystalline halls. The court followed, a chorus of mocking sounds. Ethan's presence was small, insignificant, a human among beings who had evolved for power and dominance. "Look at him," the prince said, turning to the others. "Does he not shiver? Does he not break under pressure? He is like a child pretending to play with forces far beyond his comprehension." Ethan said nothing. His silence oddly seemed to irritate the prince more than words might have. The aliens were creatures of pride, used to immediate responses, confrontation, and display. Silence was strange, uncomfortable, and it unnerved them. The prince led him to the energy grid chamber, a vast room of floating conduits and streaming light. Pulses of raw energy swirled through the air, visible and tangible. The aliens had perfected the manipulation of energy over centuries, but their methods were rigid. Ethan observed, taking careful notes, analyzing patterns the others had overlooked. "Do you understand it?" the prince asked, a sharp edge in his tone. "I can," Ethan replied softly. "With time." The prince's eyes narrowed. "With time? We do not have the patience of humans. This grid sustains our empire. Mistakes are lethal." The court laughed again. Ethan could feel their judgment pressing against him. He felt small, yes, but he was also keenly aware of every flaw in their system, every inefficiency that they accepted as tradition. They had evolved for strength, for pride, but their methods had gaps that a patient mind could exploit. Days passed. Ethan worked quietly, never arguing, never displaying anger or frustration. The court continued its whispers, subtle jabs about the weak human and his inability to keep pace. The prince, more cruel than the others, began to mock him openly during demonstrations. One day, a massive pulse threatened the stability of the grid. The aliens panicked, struggling with the controls, their energy shields faltering. The prince glanced at Ethan and smirked. "This is your time to fail, human. Let us see if you can keep up with real power." Ethan did not respond immediately. He observed, analyzed, then acted. His solution was simple, elegant, and unexpected. He adjusted a sequence, rerouted a minor conduit, and allowed the natural feedback of the energy to stabilize the system. The room's tension dissolved almost instantly. The alien stared at him, astonished. "Impossible," the prince muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "How could a human?" Ethan said nothing. He simply finished his adjustments and stepped back. The silence was stronger than any words. The prince's face flushed with frustration. His pride had been wounded not by force, but by observation and intellect. Despite his success, the court continued to mock him, though now mixed with unease. They did not understand how a human could act with such precision, with such calm in the presence of danger. Ethan's mind had no arrogance, only calculation and patience. That was more threatening than any weapon. Over the next few weeks, Ethan continued his work. Every system he touched improved. Small, unnoticed adjustments accumulated, creating stability far beyond what the aliens had imagined possible. Yet he remained quiet, never boasting, never demanding recognition. The court whispered, unsure whether to admire him or despise him. The prince, humiliated by his inability to dominate Ethan even in mockery, began to grow paranoid. Then the day came when Ethan had completed his observations. He gathered the data, prepared detailed instructions, and presented a comprehensive report. The aliens skimmed it and scoffed at the minutiae. "Humans do not understand our grandeur," the prince said. "This will fail in practice." Ethan did not argue. He simply left the palace quietly. His silence was a shield. His retreat was not defeat, it was preparation. Over the following decades, he disappeared from interstellar politics, working in secret. Every year, every experiment, every adjustment in his laboratories on distant human worlds brought him closer to mastering the technologies he had only glimpsed on Scythera. Years passed. Humanity grew quietly, steadily. They developed systems inspired by alien designs but improved with human ingenuity. Their patience, creativity, and adaptability allowed them to flourish in ways aliens could not anticipate. And throughout it all, Ethan kept detailed records of Scythera, noting weaknesses, innovations, and vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Scythera's empire continued its proud existence. The prince aged, still arrogant, still unchallenged by humans, or so he believed. He remained a symbol of power, of superiority, of the alien assumption that humans were inconsequential. One night, decades later, a faint signal blinked on Ethan's console. It was from Scythera, weak and unstable, indicating a massive failure in their energy network. The Empire was in crisis, and the same aliens who had mocked him might now be vulnerable. Ethan studied the signal quietly. He could have ignored it, continued his life among humans. But something stirred in him, a quiet sense of responsibility, a desire to see the world he had glimpsed all those years ago, now transformed by human innovation. The seed of patience he had planted 27 years ago had grown. Now it was ready to bear fruit. He prepared his ship, packed his notes and devices, and set course for Scythera. The journey would take weeks, but Ethan did not rush. He had learned long ago that time, strategy, and quiet observation were more powerful than force or words. As his ship passed through the final light years, Ethan reflected on the past. He remembered the laughter of the alien prince, the scorn of the court, and the sting of ridicule. He felt no anger, only focus. That ridicule had not weakened him. It had taught him patience, persistence, and the power of silence. When Scythera finally appeared on his viewport, the floating palaces gleaming under a violet sky, Ethan knew that the moment of reckoning was approaching. The same beings who had dismissed him as a fragile human would soon witness what their assumptions had blinded them to. The quiet strength of humanity, honed over decades, patient, intelligent, and unstoppable. He smiled faintly. They had mocked him, underestimated him, and ignored him. Yet he had learned the greatest lesson of all. Silence, when paired with preparation and insight, could echo across decades and speak louder than any words ever could. Ethan's ship descended toward the capital, and for the first time in 27 years, he would walk among the aliens who had scorned him. This time he carried more than knowledge, he carried the quiet power of humanity itself. And the Empire would soon understand that their laughter had only delayed the inevitable. The silence of one human had endured 27 years. Soon it would echo forever. Ethan Kane's ship descended slowly toward Scythera, cutting through the violet sky like a silver arrow. The floating palaces of the capital shimmered in the light of distant suns, reflecting off their crystalline surfaces. Everything seemed unchanged, yet he knew that beneath the beauty, the Empire teetered on the edge of collapse. The energy grid he had observed 27 years ago now failed, spiraling out of control. As the ship landed on a platform outside the central palace, Ethan adjusted his cloak and stepped out. Alien drones scanned him immediately, their sensors blinking with recognition. Guards appeared, armed and imposing, their translucent skin glowing faintly. He raised his hands calmly, showing no threat. They hesitated, unsure what to make of this human who had returned without warning. Inside the palace, the prince awaited. He had aged, his skin dimmer, his once sharp movements slower, yet the arrogance remained etched into every line of his face. He strode into the chamber where Ethan had been summoned, his presence commanding attention. "You return," the prince said, voice a mix of irritation and disbelief. "After all these years?" Ethan nodded silently, producing no words beyond a simple bow. His calm composure seemed to annoy the prince further. "Do you know the state of our empire? Do you understand the catastrophe that threatens our people?" "I have seen it," Ethan said softly. "And I can help," the court gasped. Some whispered nervously among themselves. A human offering to fix an empire's greatest crisis? The concept was unimaginable. Yet Ethan's presence radiated confidence, not arrogance. His quiet authority demanded attention. The prince motioned for him to follow into the energy grid chamber. Inside, chaos reigned. Pulses of energy shot wildly through conduits, lights flickering and alarms blaring. Aliens worked frantically, their precise systems failing under pressure. Ethan stepped forward and observed, his eyes scanning every flow, every pulse, every connection. He did not touch anything immediately. He did not shout instructions or criticize. He simply watched, absorbing the patterns that others overlooked. The prince and his engineers exchanged anxious glances, unsure why this human refused to act. Then, with a subtle movement, Ethan began. He adjusted a sequence of conduits, rerouted energy flows, and balanced unstable pulses with a quiet efficiency that stunned the aliens. Systems that had threatened collapse stabilized instantly, humming in perfect resonance. The prince froze, unable to comprehend what he saw.
"How?"
he whispered. "A human." Ethan remained silent. He allowed the work to speak for him. His actions revealed not only a deep understanding of Zythera's energy systems, but also an ingenuity the aliens had never anticipated. Humans did not simply follow tradition, they improved it. Over the next hours, Ethan moved from one unstable sector to another. Each time his solutions were unexpected, elegant, and effective. The palace's engineers watched in awe. Their methods, perfected over centuries, were limited by rigid thinking. Ethan's human mind, flexible and innovative, overcame every obstacle with precision. The prince's pride crumbled slowly. His laughter, once mocking, had long since disappeared. He realized painfully that the human he had ridiculed 27 years ago had become something far beyond the scope of his arrogance. This was not just knowledge. It was the quiet strength of human patience, intelligence, and creativity. Word spread quickly through the palace. Courtiers whispered of Ethan's brilliance. He had not fought with weapons or challenged authority. He had demonstrated a power that relied on intellect, observation, and calculated action. The court began to see humans in a new light, not fragile outsiders but capable beings with unique strengths. As the final energy conduit stabilized, the chamber fell silent. The alarm ceased. The lights glowed steadily. The once chaotic grid hummed in perfect balance. Ethan stepped back, wiping a faint smear of residue from his sleeve. He looked at the prince, who now stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes. "You saved us," the prince said, voice trembling. "You, a human. You've done what we could not." Ethan said nothing. His silence had always been his shield, his strategy, and now it was his statement. He had allowed patience to grow over decades, turning ridicule into a quiet, unstoppable strength. The echo of his silence resonated through the palace, louder than any words or insults ever could. The prince's mind raced. The arrogance that had defined his life now felt hollow. He had underestimated humans, dismissed them as weak and inconsequential. And yet here was proof that patience, intelligence, and creativity could surpass brute strength and pride. In the days that followed, Ethan worked with the court, teaching them methods they had never imagined. His approach was always subtle, guiding rather than commanding, allowing the aliens to take credit while observing how much they had misunderstood their own systems. Every lesson, every adjustment, demonstrated that humans could think differently, adapt, and solve problems beyond conventional limits. The empire, once rigid and unyielding, began to change. Engineers and scholars noted human methods, questioning their old assumptions. They realized that strength was not only in muscle or energy output, but in observation, innovation, and patience. Humans, once ridiculed, had quietly shown their value. Ethan's presence inspired more than technical improvement. It inspired hope, humility, and respect. Aliens who had mocked humans began to see the potential in cooperation. They recognized that other species could teach them, challenge them, and expand their understanding of the universe. The prince, humbled by the events, finally spoke to Ethan privately. "All these years I thought humans were insignificant. I mocked you, ignored you, and believed my judgment superior. But now I see. I was wrong," Ethan nodded. "It is not weakness to be patient. It is not foolishness to observe. Silence is not emptiness, it can hold understanding far beyond words." The prince lowered his gaze, a rare gesture of respect. "Your silence. It echoes louder than my words ever did." As Ethan prepared to leave Zithera, he did so with the quiet satisfaction of one who has endured and triumphed without boast. The Empire had been saved, not by force, not by arrogance, but by the steady, intelligent application of human insight. Outside on the crystalline platform, his ship awaited. He turned once, looking back at the floating palaces, the humming energy grids, and the alien empire that had once laughed at him. They had learned finally the value of human resilience and creativity. His silence had taught them more than confrontation ever could. As his ship lifted into the violet sky, Ethan reflected on the journey. 27 years ago he had been ridiculed, dismissed, and underestimated. He had remained patient, studied, and prepared. The world had changed because of it. The aliens would remember this moment for generations. A human, quiet and unassuming, had demonstrated a strength beyond their expectations. Ethan smiled faintly as the stars stretched before him. He had shown that patience, intelligence, and silent perseverance could overcome any arrogance. The echo of his silence would indeed last forever, a testament to humanity's enduring power. In the vastness of space, he set his course for home. Humans would continue to grow, to innovate, to observe, and to excel. The universe was vast, full of civilizations that underestimated humans, full of opportunities to demonstrate the quiet strength that resided in every one of them. For Ethan Kane, the journey was complete. Yet for humanity it was only the beginning. His silence had spoken, the universe had listened, and the echoes of human potential would never fade.